What's up, Internet? So the Cutlass is back in the garage. I took it to a car show this last weekend. It actually won a trophy, which I wasn't expecting, which is really cool. Um, but I've been driving it a little bit here and there. The first time it's been on the road in a long time. And the motor that's in this car used to be in the Camaro that I ran at time attack events and things like that. And the motor always ran really, really great in that car. It doesn't seem to be running great in the Cutlass, and part of that is I think I did a carburetor change. The Rocket 350 that was in this car, it had a 650 CFM Edelbrock on it. And when the motor was in the Camaro, I had a 750 Holly on it. And I'm actually going to switch back to the 750. Now, one thing I wasn't able to do on the Camaro that I'm going to do on this car is put a carburetor spacer on there. Now, one thing that'll do is raise the carburetor up. It'll give the fuel a little bit more time to atomize as it's going into the motor. And I'm going with an open style carburetor spacer. And that will allow even pulses on each side of the carburetor during the cycle of the engine. And that should just help it run a little bit smoother. It'll pick up a little bit power. I'm not so much doing it for the power. I'm hoping that it'll just smooth everything out as it goes in. So one of the things I'm going to do with that is I need to put taller studs for the carburetor on the engine, because the old studs, since they were shorter, when you add the spacer, it's going to take that up and it won't bolt down correctly. So I'm going to show you how to install the studs on this engine. But before that, I'm also going to show you real quick the difference between when I'm talking about a split and an open style spacer. So as you can see, I got my carburetors here. Here's the Edelbrock that's coming off of the engine, and here's the new Holly that I'm going to be putting on. Well, it's not new, but it's going to be new on this setup once again. So you can see I got it all set up with the fuel lines, but I'm here to show you the different spacers that I'm going to be putting on the engine. So this is what I like to call, or this is what is called, a split spacer. You see it'll raise the carburetor up, but it seals to the bottom of the carburetor, so each side of the manifold is only pulling from one side. Now, there's all kinds of science and everything that goes into carburetor spacers for tuning an engine. There's different materials. This one's aluminum, and the one I'm going to is aluminum. If you have a fuel boiling problem or you're really worried about heat on an engine, you want to go with a wood or a phenolic spacer, and they're made out of a material that doesn't transfer heat as much. On the Vortec engine, it doesn't have an exhaust crossover and it doesn't have a coolant crossover right underneath the carburetor, so I'm not as concerned about that. Now, the carburetor spacer I'm putting on is an open style. And just like it says, it's open right here, and that just allows a larger plenum area underneath the carburetor, and it allows the pulses during idle to feed on both sides of the carburetor idle circuit. So I'm hoping that this will help smooth things out. Before I put it on, I need to go get a plug for the back, because this one is set up where you can put a adapter in here and you can run your PCV off the back of this. The Holly already has a bung off the back, so I'm going to run from there instead of using this. So that's where I'm at, and I'll get that put on, but I'm going to show you the stud setup right over here. Okay, so when installing studs like onto this intake manifold for the carburetor, the first thing you want to do is get everything finger tightened going in there. That way you know it's not cross-threading. Then you're going to need two nuts that are going to be able to go on the stud here. So there's my first one and my second one. Now you want to tighten down the top one till it makes contact with the bottom one. And what that does is it forces those two together to lock it in place, so they won't tighten down anymore, and the actual stud will spin into the threads. And it's installed. Then you just put the wrench on the bottom nut, you tighten it, and that'll release everything. Now this principle works the same for removing a stud, except you'd have the top one and then you'd loosen the bottom one till it makes contact, and then you put your wrench on the bottom one and it'll work that out. Now you could just put a set of channel locks on this open area, but if you had a stud that went all the way down with threads, you don't want to worry about damaging those threads. So that's a quick tip on how to put in studs, quick and simple.